Welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast, proudly presented by Venture Hunting and Outdoors. If you're like us and passionate about hunting, spearfishing, and many other outdoor-related pursuits, with an eagerness to fast-track your learning, then this is the podcast for you. Hey team, and welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast. Today we are joined by Grant Rand. So for you guys that don't know Grant, he is one of the owners of Kayuga Broadheads. Very experienced hunter and respected within the bow hunting community here in Australia. And so today we've got him down after doing a fair bit of testing, and we're going to be focusing on the pointy of the arrow. We're going to be focusing on broadheads. So what we've done is we sort of do a deep dive on everything broadheads. We discuss, expandables, 2 blades, 3 blades, single bevel, double bevel, talk about, essentially how loud broadheads are, talk about expandables versus bleeders, talk about, cutting on contact. Cover a huge range of topics that, questions that you guys have probably always wanted answered, because I know I have. And having Grant, who's got like an engineering background, obviously designed these broadheads or helped design a lot of these broadheads at Kayuga. We talk about the quality of steel, edge retention, like all those type of things, and talk about sharpness. There's just so much stuff in this podcast. I can't list it all, but that's what we discuss in the main podcast. We also get Grant to answer our listener FAQ that got sent in. So if you guys have a listener question, please make sure to send that through to info@twinelements.com.au with the subject line FAQ. Equally, you can send us a message at Twin Elements, Aidan Doumtsis Outdoors, or James Doumtsis Outdoors, and we will answer that on a future podcast. But looking forward to this one, guys. I know you guys are going to love it, and hopefully you learned as much as I did. So we'll jump into the podcast.
Venture Hunting and Outdoors is Australia's premier hunting retailer, starting with a team of passionate hunters and the clear mission to give Australian hunters the resource they deserve. Through community events, top quality gear, exclusive deals, and expert guidance, Venture is more than a hunting store. Venture Hunting is a community. Check out their incredible megastore in Springwood, Brisbane today. Or, if you're in Victoria, make sure you head to their Hamilton store. The team stock epic brands that we love and support, including Numa Camouflage, Hoyt Archery, Kayuga Broadheads, Dog and Gun Coffee, Ebola Stock Packs, Leopold Optics, Carnivore Collective, and much, much more. Make sure to head in store and get to know their loyal staff, or if you're out of town, make sure you head to their website, www.venturehunting.com.au, to shop all things hunting and outdoors. We will see you there.
Well, legends, today's guest needs no introduction. We've got Grant Rand.Grant from Kayuga Broadheads jumping on and gracing us with his time and presence. I almost feel like after the last episode, having Maddie and Brad Smith on, that we need to get Ian Summers on to round out the trio that is Kayuga Broadheads. But what we're going to do is just get a bit of a history from Grant, get him to introduce himself, maybe talk about when you started hunting, Randy, and then talk about, what's your favourite species to hunt and what hunts you've got planned coming up.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Grant Rand.Grant. I've been doing the bow hunting side now for coming up 12, maybe 13 years or something like that. Been hunting with old man and uncles and stuff like that. I think I started tagging along when I was about 6, poking around with guns, chasing rabbits and whatnot. And that progressed into, got access to a place that I couldn't shoot on with a rifle, and there was deer there, and I picked up a bow and thought, how hard could it be? And here we are. I'm fully immersed in the bow hunting scene now. It's not really a hobby or anything. It's a bit of a way of life now for me. Life pretty much rotates around that nucleus.
Yeah, I imagine between obviously running and doing a lot of the stuff with Kayuga broadheads, in the day to day, and then plus just hunting and personally, you're pretty immersed in the old hunting scene as well as bow clubs and that type of thing. as well as on social media. So yeah, speaking from experience as well, like you're very passionate, and especially obviously around the broadhead stuff that we'll talk about in the future. But have you got a favourite species to hunt?
I'm a bit of a sucker for a mountain boar. I don't know why. The other boars and stuff like that don't really tick the thing, but something about them wily old cagey mountain warriors, it just, I don't know why. Because I really like chasing the fallow deer and any deer. I just like hunting anything, really, I don't have a preference. If I could hunt anything, I'd hunt anything. It doesn't have to be one thing for life. I want to hunt everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I already know the answer, but other than obviously hunting the rut and stuff in the hunter, have you got any big plans for 2026?
I'm going to go chase some reds in around the Raw 26. So that'll be good fun. I haven't got a red on the deck yet, so hopefully I can change that in 26. And then nothing else major planned. I'll probably try and get up north, whether it be up the territory or up the Cape again or something like that. And then 27 locked in to go and chase caribou over in Greenland. So deposits paid on that. So I just got to come up with the rest of the cash.
Yeah, nice. And that's huge bucket list hunt. Whether I jump in actually on that trip or potentially go the year after, I guess it depends on finances. But definitely on the list or bucket list hunt for me to go and chase a caribou and potentially a muskox. So I secretly actually want to tick off the bovine 5. So we've obviously got 3 here in Australia. The last one's obviously outside of Australia being muskox and Cape buffalo, which are probably a bit more exy. I mean, a bantang is still pretty expensive, but
bantang's up there.
Yeah, but Cape buffalo and muskox would be just an incredible experience. And obviously, like, I work with bovines, in every day-to-day life, so I have a huge place in my heart. But yeah, really, really enjoy hunting them as well. So, and it's also one of the smallest slams to tick off. But yeah, also just in very all round cool remote places. So definitely keen to tick those off in the future.
I mean, it's almost a slam made for Aussies. 66% of them are here already. So you'd be mad not to.
That's right. But what we might do is we might just shift pace now and talk about, broadheads themselves. I think what we're going to do is obviously, like I mentioned, we've done all this testing. We're going to do a really deep dive into broadheads and everything. But just for those, listeners that may not be, up to scratch on broadheads and how much, everyone looks at them and just goes, yeah, they're the pointy end of the thing. Well, we obviously emphasize that having the best broadhead is the sharp broadhead, but even within that, there's so many different factors on like the tanto tip, or whether it's 2-blade, 3-blade, 4-blade, how many grain it should be, is it a mechanical, is it vented, is it a fixed blade? Like, there's so many different options out there. People are scratching their head, jumping up and down saying, what should I be shooting? Why? Blah, blah, blah. So hopefully we can answer a lot of these questions. To be honest, I'm probably going to be directing it to our, professional here, and getting him to answer a lot of these questions. And then I'll probably just jump in and, add in little details and stuff here if I feel like it's relevant. So firstly, let's just talk about, the differences between, like, the comparison between, just say a 2-blade, cut on contact, and 3-blade, and, just throw 4-blade in there with the sort of 3 blades and talk about, the pros and cons of both.
Yeah, man. So, like, the 2-blade's been around since the inception of man, essentially. We're all here because of a 2-blade broadhead, whether it was a stone point or something like that. But it hasn't really changed a lot over the years. It's a pointy tip. It's got to be sharp, and it's got to draw blood. But over the years, advances in technology and material and stuff like that, we've been able to put a twist on the traditional side of things. And like in our range there, we've got the old school, which is the old school for a reason. It's just a very simple, basic, 3-to-1 ratio steel. It's a 3-piece pressed steel and brazed construction with a aluminium or a stainless steel adapter, depending on the weight that you're chasing. And they're available in a double and a single. I don't know if we want to go down the single bevel, double bevel road this early, or if that's a later rabbit warren.
We'll probably jump. I was more thinking like in terms of, not even single bevel, double bevel, just purely like, the difference between 2-blade and 3-blade. So often like more for our listeners, like obviously a 2-blade broadhead, you're generally going to get better penetration, but may not get the wound channels depending if it is single or bevel. And this is the hard thing. Like there's so many little factors between like if you've got a single bevel 3-blade versus a double bevel 2-blade, or even just comparing the difference between a single bevel 2-blade or a double bevel 3-blade, where you'd assume that, you're going to get a better wound channel with the 3-blade, but, with that rotation you get from a single bevel, as we'll get into, like that may not necessarily be the case. And it depends on so many animal factors, on how they're standing, how the skin's pressed, how they're turned. But generally speaking, what we say is like a 2-blade broadhead, because you've got, 2 blades, you're going to get more penetration than if you're shooting a 3-blade. And like some of those benefits is if you're shooting like a shorter draw length or a lower poundage or something like that, where penetration and getting it, in there or getting it through bone and stuff like that is potentially going to be a concern of yours. There's nothing better than a 2-blade. And we're going to get into some of this testing that we did later on, which was like, we did some force testing through media. So we ran a heap of different broadheads through a consistent media to see how much force was required to get through that media. And we compared, 2 blades, 3 blades, 4 blades, Kayugas versus a heap of other competitive broadheads from Australia and the US that were on the market, and all just new out of the packet. So that we'll keep you on the edge there, but we'll get to that later on. But the benefit of a 3-blade then is you obviously get a bigger cut, but you're sacrificing that penetration, but you are making a bigger hole. Potentially you're cutting more tissue in there when it's going through, but you may not get a full pass through. And so then it's like you want to be shooting a higher poundage bow, potentially a longer draw length, and then a 3-blade is going to be an option. And then 4-blade's very similar to 3-blade. We do obviously have variations nowadays with things like bleeders, where you see a lot of companies have a 2-blade, fixed broadhead, like the pilot cut, for example, and then they've thrown bleeders in there to make it, require less energy, but you get a bigger cut. So,
and it becomes more versatile head too. You get, like with the pilot cut, you get essentially, it's 3 broadheads in one. You can run it as a 2-blade single bevel. You can run it as the 2-blade single bevel with a bleeder, or we offer a wide cut bleeder, which is a 1 inch or 25.4 mil wide, and you essentially turn that thing into a 4-blade with, depending on the size broadhead, but it's over a 2-inch cut. So you're talking in the realms of mechanical cutting diameters, but it's a 4-blade cut. And the benefit of that is that wound can never actually seal back up because it creates 4 little tags of skin, as opposed to like the downside of a 2-blade is, they penetrate really well, but they also create super sleek and smooth wound channels. And like in a boar's fighting pad or a buffalo that's got that rubbery type skin, you can shoot them absolutely perfect, and that wound just presses back together because at the time, their skin might have been compressed or a bit tight. There's pros and cons to it, and every hunter can benefit from a different broadhead one way or another, and it just depends on what they're chasing from the broadhead. Like if they're low poundage, low kinetic energy, kids, women, short draw archers, or low poundage archers, a 2-blade, later it'll go in and we'll give some numbers off with the testing we did today, and it's just eye-opening. Like there's some crazy percentage differences between 2-blade to 2-blade broadhead, even though on paper or technically it's the same thing. They're not the same, and we've done a lot of work developing bits and pieces on them just so they're more effective and efficient for you guys at the end user.
Leopold optics deliver unmatched clarity. I'm running the 10x50 Santiam binoculars, and Aiden's running the BX4 range-finding binoculars. It's their low light capabilities that make them stand out from the rest. spotting game at first light on our guided hunts long before our other hunters with their inferior binoculars. Rugged, reliable, and engineered for the field, Leopold lets you spot game and judge distance with absolute confidence. Don't miss a moment. Go to Venture Hunting and Outdoors website and upgrade your vision and your hunt with Leopold, the optics trusted by serious hunters worldwide. The next thing to jump into that, and this is probably a little bit outside, but grain. So you hear people talking about like 100 grain, 125 grain, 150 grain, 175 grain, 200 grain plus, and then I'll link that to like FOC. We've got these guys in the US that love these like ultralight setups. They're shooting like often 100 or, 125 grain, and they hear, like that I'm shooting 175 grain pilot cut now with a bleeder, and have an outsert up front, and they're just like, my broadhead combination at the first 8 inches is like, my broadhead outsert and arrow for the first 8 inches is like nearly as heavy as like some of these guys' whole arrow setup.
Could potentially just your broadhead and outsert could be heavier than some of those. Like some of them whitetail guys are running like 330, 350 grain arrows. Like it's like I've done it before. I tried it. I'm not a fan. It works really well. You have really flat trajectory, but yeah, as soon as you come on contact with bone or the shoulder or a fighting pad on a ball, like it just bounces off, and it might be well suited to some of that tree stand hunting where you're not coming in contact with the shoulder bone, like you're only playing with a couple of ribs, and a whitetail rib's not exactly the most dense or the strongest like bone structure to try and get through. But bulk of it around 125 to 150 grain broadhead, that seems to be the go-to in Australia and abroad. The 100's a bit more popular in America, but yeah, it all depends. There's not one right answer for each setup, because you've got like your short draw archers, your women, your kids and stuff like that. You can't just slap 150 grain broadhead on their setup, because the thing's going to just, at 20 metres, it's going to fall 8 to 10 inches. It's just going to fall out of the sky. And likewise for the guys shooting long draw and stuff like that, they need that little bit of extra weight there. So it's not a one size fits all when it comes to broadhead weights and stuff like that. And again, as you said, there's 60 grain, 75, 100 grain inserts, and you add that to 125, and all of a sudden you got 250, 300 grains of point weight. And yeah, the FOC, from my experience and what we've seen and stuff like that, some of these super high, like 20+% FOC arrow builds, they penetrate well. You momentum kills it. You can't argue that. But the difference is it's not a forgiving setup. If you're out, once that animal pushes out, 25 metres, if you're out 1 metre or 2 metres, that's the difference between hitting it in the sweet spot and hitting it low in the brisket and wounding an animal, or like if you're lucky, you'll miss completely, and that's a win for everyone then. But yeah, it's a happy medium. There isn't a right answer for the whole board.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. So it's like you want to have, like, and it comes back to the quality of the steel and everything made in the broadhead, but like, yeah, what weight you're choosing for a broadhead ultimately determines on like how much speed you want to be chasing. But it's also like, if you don't have enough, then you don't have that FOC, so you're not getting that like momentum, and almost like where the head of the arrow like pulls, like a sort of javelin, I guess, like pulls that arrow through the air, or pulls it. People talk about like, going in and like, penetrating into a critter and like almost pulling that skin and the hide and everything like that in. But it's also like with the FOC, like if you've got too much, so like actually up at Kayuga we were talking about, I may have too much FOC because I've got, Smithy was saying like when he, at my draw length with, like if he had like over 250 grain up front, he was noticing that it'd take like 15 meters for the shafts to stop like moving side to side, which, it doesn't sound like much, but when you're shooting a lot of bedded boars at less than 15 meters, if that arrow's like, instead of it going straight and just moving in a straight line, if it's tailing and moving left and right, that's going to change massively. Like your point of contact may be the same, but if it's angling left or angling right, like it's trajectory into that hog may be completely different. So with that, we did some filming and stuff in slow-mo, and we could see it, which was really cool for us because it was the first time like Aiden and I had sort of done that sort of testing. And so because of that, like I'm still going to run the 175 grains because my setup, like I don't really plan on shooting a lot of hogs bedded at 15 yards, or 20, 15 meters, whatever. That was more just when we're in the Cape. Like most of the time my shots are probably, 20 sort of meters, 20 to 30, I'd say, or 15 to 30. And so, going to keep running them just because I've really enjoyed those 175 grain pilot cuts. But whether in the future I go and drop back down to that 150 grain with the bleeders that, works out at sort of 164 or whatever it is, just to get that weight down a little bit and maybe stop that left to right movement. But there definitely is like a too high side in FOC as well, and not enough side. But finding that sweet spot.
Oh, and the other side of it too is if you've got too much FOC at the front, you like your arrow spine, you run the risk of not having the energy to actually push it through. Like, they say the energy pulls, but we've seen guys like with the super, 300-400 grains up front shooting these 250 grain broadheads and 100 grain brass inserts, and the arrow hits and it snaps at the point of where that insert is because the energy transfer, it creates a weak point. Like there's a weak point in the system and that becomes there. So it hits and it's got no drive from the back of the arrow and that weight to actually push it in. It penetrates an inch or two in the skin, snaps the arrow, and it's a balance. It's a balance, and you have to find it. It's a three-legged thing. You need that. You need the speed. You need the weight, but you also need the momentum. And it's just everyone's setup is slightly varied. Like my arrows won't work for James's setup. James's arrows wouldn't work with my setup, and likewise, I couldn't shoot Kimmy Guest's arrows, and she couldn't shoot my arrows. They'd work, but it'd be a very ineffective setup.
So the next thing that we often get questions about, through the podcast, but also just like talking to people at expos and stuff, like we obviously had the Wild Deer Expo a couple of weeks ago, or a fair few weeks ago now. And we were at the Kayuga booth and we had all these people coming up and talking about, fixed versus mechanical broadheads and, the pros and cons. And in Australia, I think, we don't have a huge mechanical culture compared to the US. Like over there, they have a massive, mechanical culture. We've very much got like a cut-on contact, fixed blade heads. And I think that's because we hunt so much and, we just hear, like there's the few people that use them or have used them. There's a lot of like horror stories of broadheads, and even like we'll jump into one from today, but do you want to jump in, Randy, and just talk about the pros and cons of fixed versus mechanical?
Yeah, man. I have run a few mechanicals over the years. I'm not the biggest fan because of premature deployment of them. I think the Americans are super popular there, especially in that whitetail scene, because they're doing a lot of tree stand hunting and they're shooting down, and there's not like a lot of Australian style hunting is spot and stalk. So we're on the ground and we're having to shoot through grass. We're shooting through small brushes and shrubs and stuff like that. And like a lot of those mechanicals, the ones that are held in with little bands, and it doesn't take a great deal for them to spit out. And then you just get an out of balance arrow and your arrow starts doing spins and turns and stuff like that. You lose all the kinetic energy in your setup, and they do work and they are very effective, but it's the risk of what if it deploys early, what if it doesn't deploy, what if it hits a bone, locks up and snaps off. Fixed blade, the what if is, what if it breaks the bone, what if it doesn't break the bone. It's guaranteed to still do that cut. There's no variable on that front. And I think we do that much hunting here. Well, majority of us do a fair bit more hunting. Like we probably do more hunting in a year or two than most Yanks do in a lifetime, just because of the availability, and we don't have seasons and stuff like that. And even the way we hunt, the way we aim and stuff like that, it's slightly different because of the setups we use and the animals we chase. But yeah, I can see the reason for the popularity over there. It's a good insurance policy to have a 2.5 inch or a 3 inch cut that you don't have to tune your bow for. And like, if you're only going out for a hunt once a year and it's a 3 or 4 day hunt, you're not, like most of us Aussies are pretty hardcore into it when we're doing it. We're shooting a bow all the time. We're hunting once a month, once every 2 or 3 months. We've got the boots on the ground. We've got the practice. Whereas, yeah, if you're only doing it for 2 weeks of the year or a couple of days of the year, it's just easy to not have to worry about tuning your bow, because with a fixed blade broadhead, there is a little bit more tuning that you have to do with your setup. So everything's pros and cons. Just, yeah, my personal take on it, I'd rather shoot a fixed blade because there's no variable of it failing, or very little chance of it failing.
Yeah, I think with like the broadhead, and the reason why it hasn't really gained a huge amount of popularity in Australia is because, you know, there's a fair few people that have tried them, and there's a fair few horror stories, and like even today. So in today, when we were testing one of the broadheads, we were doing edge retention. So we measured the sharpness of broadheads straight out of the packet, and then what we actually did was, in the second test, we measured edge retention we went out this morning and actually shot a Rusa hind first thing this morning, and then, you know, a couple of hours later we were setting her up and we were actually shooting broadheads fresh out of the packet, and then measuring the edge retention of that broadhead to sort of measure, you know, the steel quality of that head, and, you know, just reflect and show how good that broadhead was going to stand up after being actually shot through a critter. So trying to put it into like real life practical scenarios. And so one of the heads we actually used was mechanical, and it was just interesting. Like we were shooting all the broadheads purposely through the shoulder of this Rusa hind. So, you know, like a pretty medium sized critter. Like, it's obviously like reds and elk are bigger, but, you know, fallow and stuff are small. Like, it's a good representation of sort of the bone structure of what most animals here in Australia, and even a lot of the ones in the US and New Zealand, have. And we pretty much wrecked that broadhead, and we're obviously not here to bash competitors' names and stuff like that, so like we're not going to say the company and stuff, but I will say it's like a very
it's a high end and a reputable brand. It looks the goods.
Yeah, if I was going to shoot, like, there's sort of 2 brands really that I know of in the mechanical space, put it that way, and like this was one of them, if that makes sense. So it's like, you know, it's not like we've got some dodgy cheap pack. Like, it was, how much was it for the two broadheads?
Somewhere in the realms 120, 140 Australian dollars for 2 of them.
Yeah, so
like, they're not
$60, $70
yeah,
a head.
they ain't, I don't know, Alibaba chump change specials.
Yeah.
These are, you know, the Ferraris of the mechanical world. And yeah, it was, look, it worked. It'd kill the deer, but it was definitely, you couldn't reuse it after the fact. Like, it's
for sure,
longevity is not there.
The thing that I didn't like everything else, out of Randy's bow at 12 meters. So all the other broadheads went straight through and into the Reinhardt out the back. Whereas this thing, like, I question if it even got through the shoulder.
Well, I don't think it hit the offside shoulder. It come through the first, and then it pulled up in the center cavity. So, and like all those other, like, I'm not shooting anything crazy. It's a 70-pound SR6 Bowtech at 28.5 inch, and I'm shooting a 475 grain arrow. Like, it's nothing special. I'm not drawing 80 pound. I'm not shooting super high FOC. I'm not shooting super heavy arrows. It's a very bog standard run of the mill, and all of the other fixed blade heads we tested punched through shoulder to shoulder, and then 2 to 8 inches into the Reinhardt target behind. This thing, got into the chest cavity, and it would have done the job. But yeah, 2 holes are better than 1, especially for a blood trail anyway.
Oh, and I think even you are having like a potentially 2-inch cut. For me, it's not worth the risk. Like, even you hear like what Grant was saying before, like when they open up before, you know, actually hitting the animal and those little bands break or whatever, or the spring, you know, a spring malfunctions. It's just like, there's so many problems that you hear, whether it be hitting bone or, grass or vegetation, administering one of the blades and then flying irregularly or getting bound up in the skin or bound up in bone or, whatever. Like, there's just so many negatives And I mean, yes, you can have like massive wound channels and stuff, but at what cost? And so I think that's why, at least here in Australia, we've had, not really a huge uptake. I know some very sort of accomplished hunters here in Australia that have used them for a long time and never had a problem, but they're also very, very good shots, and they're also very educated in, like, they've told me that it's like they avoid that front shoulder and front bone, and there's shots that they haven't taken because they've been afraid of it and stuff like that. And so like, I don't really want to run a setup that you're hesitating to take a shot because you're like, oh, I might hit some bone here.
Well, it limits you, and bow hunting's hard enough as it is without putting extra limitations on what you can and can't do. That's just my opinion on it, but I mean, some of these 2-inch, like, once they get over that 2-inch cut, yeah, it's a different realm. But there's a fair few fixed blades now, especially as you said there with the bleeders and stuff like that, where you can get very close to that 2-inch cut and have the confidence and reliability of a fixed blade head without the risk. Like, it mitigates that risk of an issue completely by having a fixed blade head, and that's, I mean, our whole range is based on fixed blade heads, and until we can come up with a mechanical that's going to be 100% bomb-proof or fail-proof, I can't see us bringing a mechanical to the market. But never say never.
Are you in the market for serious boots for all feet, terrain and adventures? Well, look no further than Lower Boots. We have been running the Lower GTX3s for many, many years now. I've lost count of how many years and adventures we've had these boots without so much as a blister. They are flexible enough while still being supportive. I run them across multiple land types, whether it's in the Northern Territory floodplains, the mountains of Montana, or the basalt wall country in North Queensland, Australia. The team at Lower have extended their generosity to you, our valued listeners, and supplied us with a unique discount code. Head to their website and let them know we sent you. Use code TWINELEMENTS10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. If you're like me and enjoy trying things before you buy, then head in store to Venture Hunting. They have their Springwood Megastore as well as their smaller store in Hamilton, Victoria. Enjoy the benefits of trying before you buy and get the perfect fit. Wear Lowers on your next hunt. Your feet will thank you for it.
Well, that's fair enough. And I guess the next thing that, out of my curiosity a little bit, like, and I think I already know the question to the first part, but, when you talk about solid versus vented broadheads, and often with the vented ones, we're talking about like that lighter end, that 100, 125 grain, where you've sort of skimmed weight to try and... so firstly, talk about the noise associated with vented broadheads. Like, is there a noticeable noise? And the second thing is it like, and it may just be like sort of your experience rather than like testing like what we've sort of done, but is there any sacrifices on like strength within that broadhead? Like, obviously the vents, like, comparing it to the, like, I believe the 100 grain Zots vented, for example. So like comparing the 100 grain Zot to the 125 grain Zot that doesn't have a vent, is there sacrifices in strength to get it to that weight?
Yeah, there is 100%. You can't have all the added features of the extra weight and not have the down. Like, when you drop that weight, the weight has to go somewhere, and you physically can't just take that weight. You can't just disappear it off the back of the thread. You can't just make it shorter, because you make them too short and steep, they have an issue with penetration, and you get a lot more chance of like running ribs and stuff like that. We've tried to stick to like a bit of a 3-to-1 ratio with all of our heads to allow that penetration, and the 100 grain Zot's the only vented head in our lineup. I think we might have seen 2 or 3 that have snapped like along that vented section there. But what we've done to try and eliminate or mitigate some of that noise is put a very small radius on the edge, because any square edge creates like a tiny wind catch and then creates a whistle. Whereas by putting those radiuses on, it doesn't allow the air to sit and create like a little, like a backdraft or a venturi and create a whistle there. So we did sound testing there, and like, some of the results from some other vented broadheads out there were very woeful. But that 100 grain Zot, it definitely was noisier. Like, it was noticeably noisier, but not in comparison to some others that don't have that that cutout and that radius edge on it. Our 100 grain pilot cut has a scallop in it, so it's just got a section of material taken out and then a very thin bit left in the back. Again, it makes it weak because by taking the material out, you have to sacrifice something. So the lighter the broadhead, the more flimsy it has to be, because there's physically just not enough material. And then you look at the other end of the scale, like you go from the 100 grain pilot to the 175, it's a damn axe. Like, it's a meat cleaver in comparison. It's only 75 grains, but 75 grains is a lot of material when you're talking broadheads.
Yeah, for sure. And I even noticed that, like, that's sort of the thing that drew me to that 175 grains. Like, it, even jumping up from the 150s, like, it does look like a serious amount of, like, there's a lot of steel there. Like, and I guess that was part of it. Like, just having, not that I didn't think there was, had great reliability and bone crushing results with the 150, but that, like, the 175s honestly looked like devastational. Like, when we were actually up in the Cape, just out of curiosity's sake, the car broke down and we were just sitting around waiting to be rescued, essentially, and Maddie was like, "Oh, have you shot one of these into a tree?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, like, unintentionally, when it goes through like my Reinhardt target and goes out the back, and I have a log pile in the background and stuff." He's like, "No, have you like just shot one into a tree?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "Oh, just go and shoot that tree over there." And I was just like, "No, come on, you're like taking the piss," sort of thing. And no, he's like, "No, seriously, like, we got the chainsaw out and like cut this out of this, cut it out of the tree." And anyway, so like, I take my hat off to the day 6 shaft and the 175 grain, and it was with the bleeders too, which I was like really surprised with as well. But shot this, 80 pound bow, probably like a 630 grain arrow, and at 20 yards with like a 30-inch draw straight into the tree, and it probably went in like 6 inches, I'd say. And we ended up using chainsaw to cut it out, and like the broadhead like edge was like perfect, like hadn't buckled at all. Like, even the bleeder hadn't really like crumpled up at all. Like, the component of the outsert of the day 6 shaft was like perfect, and I was just like, having that confidence and reliability in your broadhead setup was like massive for me. And this was like the first time I'd actually started using it like on critters and stuff. And so I realized it's like, I do get that little bit of wobble or whatever at less than 15 meters, but then like, to go and just like shoot a tree and then be able to cut it out and be like, hey, I would honestly touch this on a steel and go and shoot something with it, was like massive, in confidence.
Oh, that 175 is, like you said, you put the 150 and the 175 together, and it's like comparing a Yaris to a Mack truck. Like, it's a chalk and cheese difference, and it's only 25 grains, but it makes a massive difference. But yeah, some of the guys shooting them are just, they've got the nickname meat cleaver for a reason, because it's a whole heap of steel and it's nasty. If you hit something with that, there's some carnage getting brought upon it.
Well, I was starting a joke with Aiden in the US after like the antelope and muley that I shot, just from like the wound channels and what I was causing. It's starting like, with woolies where they've got like click and collect. I was going to start saying with the pilot cuts, it's literally like click and collect, where like you just like, when you hit them, they bleed. It makes serious wounds, and often, the critters haven't gone too far. So,
and that big rotation that you get, like that big spherical wound channel with the with all of the pilot cuts there, just with the different angles and stuff like that, and the way that they rotate through animals, I've seen a fair few shots that I thought, well, this is questionable, and they've been recovered, and similar shots with a different head have ended up in a bit of sadness and not recovering that animal. And I think it's purely just like that. Yeah, the design, that rotational cut, but yeah, you're very much on the money. It's a bit of a click and collect there. I haven't heard that, and I like it.
Well, that it's a good transition into the next one because we had single bevel versus double bevel. Get asked a lot of the time. It's a big thing. In the hunting space and even in podcasts discussed and in terms of pros and cons for both and the differences and stuff. Like what do you have to say about it?
I mean, it's a bit of a personal preference. I'm I'm a single bevel man, just purely because of that rotational wound channel you get. I've seen shots where if a single bevel wasn't used, the hunter would never have collected that animal, and it's only due because of that rotation of wound channel that it does, that it's, come through and knock the bottom of the heart off a fallow buck that, if that shot wasn't indexed perfectly when the broadhead hit it, like let's just say the broadhead entered it at 6, 12 to 6 sort of thing. When it exited on the other side, it was 9 to 3, but through that animal, it had done a whole rotation and a half of like a corkscrew type cut, and it actually lopped the bottom of the heart off, and that's the only reason. Like, it was a low shot, but yeah, that deer went 45 meters and rolled back down the hill. So the benefits there in that, the benefits of the bone splitting side of it are, there's 101 tests and stuff like that done online, and nothing breaks a bone like a single bevel. The double bevel, the benefit of the double bevel is if you're not 100% confident with your sharpening, they're easier to sharpen, they're easier to get a nice honed edge on. There's a lot of sharpening systems out there that are set up to do the double bevel stuff. There's not that many that are designed around a single bevel. So, like, the pros and cons in a nutshell are, you get a spherical or a corkscrew wound channel with the single bevel. You get a better bone splitting property to it, and also and the downside is they're a little bit harder to sharpen. Once you wrap your head around it, it's actually not that hard. But yeah, people just have a complex with sharpening single bevels, and they always try and put an angle back on the flat side of it. And what we see, that's always 90% of the time people have a problem with it. It's because they're trying to sharpen the back edge on an angle as well and bring it around to a double bevel. And then your double bevels, the pros are they're easy to sharpen. It's been around for 1 million years, and the downside is if you do end up hitting that bone, it doesn't give you that rotation. So you're driving a wedge into that bone rather than driving a drill or something to create a rotational crack through the bone. So at the end of the day, they both work. They both kill critters. It's personal preference, but yeah, I'm team single bevel on that one, bro.
Yeah, so am I, and I think one little extra important detail I'd just add there to the single versus double bevel debate would be on the wound channels. Like, so obviously Aiden and I use a Pilot Cuts, which is a single bevel. Aiden uses a Zot, which is a double. And yeah, just the disparity in, both incredibly good heads, great steels, super sharp as we get into. But just on average, comparing the wound channels that I get compared to what he gets, I would say that I probably get that 20 to 40% more blood. And I think it's just purely because, you'd get that rotation even in the skin, and especially with me using the bleeders, which is cheating as well. You got a bigger cutting area, and
the name says it all. It's a bleeder.
Yeah.
The bleeders, originally the Pilot Cut was just a 2-blade single bevel with no option for a bleeder, and we had great success. We had critters falling over left, right, and center, but we'd also have great shots, and you'd watch an animal run and pile up, and it'd be 25 meters stone cold dead, but there's not a drop of blood on the ground. And because of how sharp it is, on a hot day, you shoot a boar through the fighting pad or something with thick skin, or if they're wallowed, that wound just seals back up. And yeah, there's claret, and the internal damage is massive, but it doesn't actually leak out because that wound can sort of compress itself back together. And being a clean cut, yourself, if you slice your finger really cleanly, you press it back together, stitch it or steri strip it, in a couple of days it's good as gold. Whereas you get a raggedy cut on your finger, like a rough cut, it takes weeks to heal, and it never actually heals properly back the way it does. They cut, clean surgical cuts are all done like that. They heal up real well. They're not cutting them with a hacksaw or anything like that. So that bleeder is a absolute game changer for blood trails.
And you could see that even with the single bevel though, exclusively, like if you take the bleeders out of the equation, like there was a couple of all the boars that we shot up in the Cape we were doing autopsies on to document where we hit and stuff like that. And like you can just see with that double bevel, you get that really clean, neat cut. You know what I mean? And like what you're talking, like it's pretty easy for that to close over. Whereas with the single bevel, because you're getting that rotation, you like even with the wound itself, it's just like the edges don't come back together neatly, and that's why even within the animal, I think you get, like a higher success rate in terms of, finding, and especially on marginal shots. Like Smithy reckons now he had like a 20 to 25% higher, like finding rate or, success rate on marginal shots just when single bevels came out. Because he'd like someone would be like, oh, I just shot a boar. And, he'd be like, oh, what broadhead are you using? And he'd be like, oh, single bevel. He's like, oh, okay, it might be worth following up. And then they'd go and actually find that pig or whatever if it was like a little bit far back and may have hit the liver or like the back of one lung or whatever, as opposed to with double bevels where it just sort of goes in, seals up. And like, not to say like if you put it through the top of the heart, I mean, you could use a field tip and it's gonna do the job. But it's more, just on those marginal shots. And then also like often with those marginal shots, it's harder to find them because you especially with a two blade, it's just in it, or two double bevel, it's in and out, closed up, and they're not bleeding much. Whereas like single bevel, more damage, hopefully a bigger hole that's not healing up. So hopefully you actually still blood trail them 100, 200 meters, and hopefully you can get that critter. So
the single bevel creates that S-style wound channel, so it's got like a bit of a push and a pull and a tear motion to it when it does the cut, as opposed to just like a really neat slice with a double bevel. But yeah, they work. They both work. It's just you have to work out what's more important to you. Like the single bevel, a slight downside to it, I suppose, is that rotation does suck energy out of the arrow. So if you're shooting the lower poundages and short draw archers and stuff like that, it's something to consider there. But it's a very, very small percentage that it does actually suck out of it. But to get that rotation, you have to sacrifice something somewhere, and it is that kinetic energy of your arrow setup.
Whether you're chasing your next big hunt or perfecting your target archery game, precision is everything. That's where Option Archery comes in. Specialising in the quiverizer and option sights, they deliver the accuracy and reliability every serious archer demands. Lightweight, durable, and engineered to perform. Those are the tools that make every shot count. Upgrade your bow setup and see the difference on your next hunt. I've particularly enjoyed the 4S sight. Transitioning from other single pins, I've enjoyed the benefit of having the option to be able to dial in a single pin or multi-pin setup. The horizontal pin orientation has also helped with my target panic and sight picture, dramatically improving my shooting. Head to Venture Hunting and Outdoors website to order your Option Archery gear today, because every shot deserves precision. Yeah, perfect. I think what we'll do next is, I just want to talk before we go into sort of the Kayuga story, but just talk about like the importance of, and I don't want to give away any trade secrets of Kayuga here, but talk about like, we often hear about like ferrules and like tanto tips and like blade angles and stuff like that. Like, have you guys found like an optimal blade angle, for example, for a two blade?
It's not so much an optimal blade angle. Like for the double bevels, I think it's around 24, 25 degrees. Seems to be a pretty good edge. It gives you the best of both worlds, where you can get a razor sharp head, but you can also rely on a bit of edge retention and stuff like that when it goes through the critters. If you make the edge, like if you pull that angle right in, you get absolute crazy sharp. But the problem is there's not enough meat there on that edge. As soon as it hits skin or hide, it's just as likely to roll over and burr up. So, if you had a 15-degree edge on a broadhead, it'd be absolutely scary sharp. Like you'd look at it and almost cut your fingers. But the second it goes through a bit of hide or a bit of thick flesh, or you hit a bone, that thing would just absolutely roll up and destroy itself. And you don't want that. So it's a balance. And for the single bevel, we tried a few different angles when we did the very first original pilot cuts. I think we had 30, 33, 40 and 45 degree bevels on that. And yeah, we settled pretty quickly on bringing them all back to that 33 degree, because it just the same thing. It stops the edge chatter. It helps you keep retention, but there's enough meat there to keep that edge, and the angle's nice enough that you can get it sharp enough to shave as well. So once you start dropping that angle, you lose the material there, and you end up getting a lot more chatter. And if you make it a lot steeper, you don't get the chatter, but it's very hard to get it to that hair popping shaving sharp that everyone's aspiring to get, which I don't agree with.
Yeah, which we'll get into later on. I guess shifting gears now, I'd be keen to go and actually hear, like I've sort of had your side and Maddie's side and even Summer's side a little bit here, but I'd be keen to hear sort of the full story and history of, what is Kayuga Broadheads? Like, where did it come from? Like, obviously you've had, three owners now at different stages, like come in and join the team, all offering like, a lot of research and experience in the industry, and all sort of, having your own, not necessarily, like I know Summers has his signature series head with the Zot, but you've all done a lot of stuff with the head designs, and sort of have your own little, areas and fields within the business. So I'd be keen on like sort of hearing about the history of Kayuga and how far you guys have come, especially with all like the designing of the broadheads, as well as like all the tolerances and screening and all the the noise testing you guys are doing and everything like that with the packaging and stuff, because I know there's like a lot that goes into the quality control behind the scenes that a lot of people probably aren't aware of, just how rigorous the process is for you guys to get a broadhead that rocks up from Kayuga in a packet in the mail.
Oh, it doesn't just magically happen, man. There's no fairies. I wish there was, because God, it'd make my life easy. But I joined Kayuga, I couldn't even tell you now. It feels like a lifetime ago. I think I was just saying it to James the other day. I went and picked all the stuff up from Maddie's place, and everything that Kayuga had when I picked it up fitted in the back seat of my ute. And the back of a 79 is not a great deal of space. So, and now we've, over the years, we've just expanded and grown the business now to the point where I probably need to build another shed for it. It's just everything's rolling along. But we've opted for a more organic growth. We don't want to, run before we can actually walk and stand on our own 2 feet. So I jumped on with Matty because he was going up the Cape and he basically couldn't really keep running the business. And we're both working on a pilot cut type design head in our own different avenues, and we merged together and we started on that, and we started with the original pilot cut. We did a couple of alterations to that, and then a few years later, good mate Ian Summers was looking to do something with his. He had a broadhead concept and design, which is the Zot, and we talked about it a fair bit, and we're real good friends, and we sort of went, well, we'll give you all the info and the contacts and stuff like that to make it happen, or we just why sort of work against each other when we can work together. And mate, the three of us, we're all a bit of yin and yang, and we butt heads at time, but it ends up being the best for the company and you guys, the end users, because you get 3 different aspects on it, 3 different personalities, and like we're all tradesmen, we all come from like a working background, we've all got trades and engineering degrees and stuff like that. So where one of us has a shortfall, the other one has a bit more knowledge in that scene, and the boys, the amount of knowledge that's there, Matty's been bow hunting since probably he could walk, and Summers has been in the archery game for longer than I don't even want to say a figure, but the man knows everything about archery and bows. So like the knowledge there, and then my background with engineering and hydraulics and metal and stuff like that, like it's been a really good sort of a 3-way combination. It's all just melded together, and we've come up with some incredible steel that we use in the pilot cuts and the Zott range of broadheads there. Like that's our own blend. We went down a few different roads. We trialed literally years and years, probably 20 different like steel batches and recipes to get what we've got now. And yeah, it's just a work of art because it's got all the benefits of a high carbon steel with the edge retention and the strength, but also all the bonuses of a stainless steel with that like corrosion resistance and stuff like that. But yeah, that didn't happen overnight. And then getting back to that like quality control that you said and stuff like that. So we get all the broadheads here. We individually weigh every single broadhead that goes out the door. The old schools get assembled here in Australia. Like everything comes in raw form, and we assemble the packets. Everything gets weighed, counted, matched up, batched to individual. So we have like a 1 grain tolerance between the heads in the packs there. We've got like a pretty rigorous QC thing there where we get X amount of heads from a batch and go through and check the threads, check the shanks, check the cutting width, the lengths, the sharpness, the coatings. Like when you get it, it's sort of halfway had a journey already before it even gets in your quiver and gets to go and try and take a critter. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scene. We got 3 or 4 part-time employees that are here in Australia that, sort of 30 to 40 hours a week they're doing. So it's a good thing, and we've got a fair few local suppliers that we get what we can done here, but a lot of the other stuff we have to do overseas just purely based on the cost, because to get it made here, manufacturing's not exactly our strong point. And I'd have to sell you guys a packet of broadheads for about $500 if we were to get them made here. So that quality control takes it's a very big standpoint. Some people think it's a bit crazy to go to the level we do. Like James would have seen today, like some of the reject piles, and he's just going, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's a potential lot of dead animals there in that reject pile, and it might only be a reject by like 0.2 of a grain, but we've set a standard for the tolerances that we have, and we're not budging off it. And sometimes it becomes a very costly exercise by being stubborn. But we stand behind our products. If we wouldn't use it, we wouldn't send it out.
It blows my mind. I'm not going to lie. It rocked me today seeing these box of, like, it was literally, 150 grain pilot rejects, and I'm sitting here like, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's like 3 grain out," and I'm just like, people, like, we're talking 3 grain, like we're talking 3 grain out on a potential 500 grain arrow. You know what I mean? So you were talking like, what is that? 0.2% of a difference.
It's under 1%. But we've set a standard, and we're running to that standard, and we're not varying from it. It's a bit of a stubborn thing, maybe a bit of a pride thing, but we want our products. We want the end user to be 100% confident, and we want to be 110% confident when we send it out.
Oh, and I believe that, and I respect it. It's just like, for me, and I super respect it, because it, like, for how much, stock loss, essentially what you're prepared to have to make sure that the users at the end have like the ultimate product, as a business, is like, it just reflects on like how much you care about your, customer satisfaction. And I was just more blown away from it from a practical point of view, because, like, just say you've got whatever 3 or 5 grain difference. And I'm like, people aren't even going to notice that at like 40, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 yards, like a 5 or 10 grain difference. Like, even the best shooters out there, because I'm like, if there's like a 10 knot wind that's blowing across your bow, that's going to be so much more significant. Or if you're like, taking this back to like obviously actual hunting situation, like if you're twisting, to get a shot and leaning out or whatever and torquing your bow, like that's going to be so much more, that's going to impact you so much more. If you're like half squatting and trying to hold or if you're holding for more than 20 seconds and you haven't practiced, like all these factors that I've just listed is so much more significant.
Oh, way more detrimental than a couple of grains. But yeah, you have to have it, unfortunately. The market, everyone's looking for something to blame. Everyone wants to shoot like they're an Olympic archer, and yeah, unfortunately not everyone can do it. Look, there are people out there that could probably notice a couple of grains difference. I don't think too much of it. With all the testing we do, my bow's tuned for 138 or 140 grains, and I shoot everything from 100 up to 150 grains, and it changes my point of impact. Not enough that I can tell. Like, my archery skill isn't good enough to tell the difference. Ian can tell the difference. He's got his little figures in his head that he works out. He's got to aim, 3.5 hairs taller because he's using a 7.5 grain different setup. But for the average Joe Blow, you can change 100 out to a 125. You were telling me your old boys mucking around with points there. And
I was going to say, so this is a story from Dad. So Dad, who rocked up at the Cape, and I tell this story for you guys to have a laugh at because we certainly did. So Dad, I had 150 grains, and because I'd gone to the 175 grains, I said, "Here, Dad, here's a heap of pilot cuts," because he was going to order some more. So I'm like, "Here's a heap of the 150 grain pilot cuts," and I didn't realize there was a couple of 125 grain ones in there. And Dad doesn't shoot past 30 meters. You know what I mean? So Dad's like, he shoots pretty close, and he's like, "No. I'm like, I can't use those because they're like 25 grain out." And I said, "Dad, no offense, you're not like the greatest archer in the world. Like he's an average shot. He's fine. Like he'll hit a tennis ball at 30, but he's not. Actually, I can already hear him like messaging me later when he listens to this. And he's like, "Oh, just before he went to the Cape, he did a Robin Hood at 30 as like the last shot before he went." So I can, oh yeah, he's the best shot in the world. Anyway, the point is, I said, you won't notice a difference shooting out to 30 with a 25 grain difference. Like I said, I guarantee you won't notice a difference. And he's like, yeah. Anyway, so then we get there and we're looking at his arrows, and he's got two different batches of arrows, and one he cut to his draw length and the other one he's left at like full carbon length. So I think Dad's like a 28.5-inch draw. So some are like 28-inch arrows and some are like 30-inch arrows, carbon to carbon.
Yeah,
I'm like,
so there's 20.
I'm like, there's
grains.
23 grain right there. I'm like, you need to shoot the 25 grain ones just to bring it back. And he was shooting these arrows for ages, not noticing a difference, didn't even know it existed. But then when it comes to broadheads, and now we're talking about like an actual 25 grain difference, let alone like a 5 grain difference where you would scrap a whole broadhead for that. Yeah. And I just find it so ironic that people would be so particular where, if you're like at the level of like Summers or whatever, but even then it's just like, we're talking about 2/5 of a centimeter. Like, we're talking about nothing.
There's one of the batches there where our like minimum cutoff weight is 118 grains. And I reckon I had 35% of them were 117.8 grains. They all went in the reject pile for 0.2 of a grain.
That hurts.
Like, I mean, it hurt doing it. When you crunch the numbers, you almost want to cry. But we've set a standard with our customer service and wanting to give the customers the best thing. And like anyone that's had a warranty issue or something like that and dealt with us can attest to it. Like we want you to have, we want it to work for you. Like we don't make excuses for it. If something fails, it fails. Yeah, we're not about making excuses for it. But by doing these things, by doing all these checks, we're trying to mitigate any of those, heads that are a bit light. It might be a problem there. And look, at the end of the day, there's always going to be problems because anytime you do anything with metal, there's always a level of expected failures or expected rejects and stuff like that. Like through the process that we do with the metal injection, if there's a tiny speck of dust in the process that, when old mates tip the bag of material and stuff like that into the machine, if it's got a handful of dust on top of it and that goes through the machine, that can then add tiny microscopic little air pockets inside that broadhead, and through the process creates a weak spot. And then we've had people where they go, I just screwed it in and it literally just snapped, and you go, can you send me a photo? And you have a look and there's a tiny little mark and it's a stress fracture, and it all just blows out from there. And it happens, unfortunately. It's just a part of it, and you can't bypass that, and that's something that we can't check unless we literally torque tested every single arrow and broadhead. And with all the other things we do, it's not practical or feasible, unfortunately.
Oh, and I think that's just a thing that's going to happen that's a problem with every design in broadheads, in the sense of like, you're just going to have mishaps. But, with the amount of testing and the robust sort of screening process that you do, you can be confident that it's been put through the paces, I guess, before you even get it, and making sure that it is the best that it possibly can be. And I think the big one with that, for me, having transitioned from, previous broadheads that I use and now talking to people on the market, the biggest thing that I really, really enjoy about the Kayuga Broadheads, and it's a good transition into sort of the next topics that we'll talk about, the testing today, is, the sharpness straight out of the packet, the edge retention. And the biggest thing as well is just like using the quality gear that you guys have used. Like, I'll sharpen a broadhead, be out in the rain, and if it was any other broadhead that I've previously ever used, and a fair few that I hear about in the market, and like this is probably going to hit home with a lot of people, you go out and like any time in winter, your broadheads rust. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, well, all of a sudden your broadhead's rusted, and it's like, that is now a dull broadhead. So then you're constantly sharpening that head. And it's just like, so anytime it rains, anytime there's mist, fog, wet, grass, whatever, it's just like, for 6 months of the year, you're pretty much sharpening your broadheads. Even through summer, if you get rain, sharpening it. Like any form of, like, you cross a creek, whatever.
Oh, humidity up north, just the general amount of moisture in the air, like for New Zealand, and that walking through waist-high grass in winter, chasing boars and critters around the mountains. It gets wet, oxidizes, and before you know it, that razor-sharp broadhead that you spent time getting to be perfect is now a glorified butter knife.
Yeah, and it's like, and that was a massive learning experience for us, like just realizing like how dull, or how vigilant you needed to be with your sharpening and stuff, like, because you pretty much just need to put them on the steel like every day. You know what I mean? Because it's not like it just disappears, but there's definitely that like...
Well, it's a microscopic oxidization of the edge where it starts to just, basically eat the metal away, and that beautiful honed edge is no longer honed. So you lap it with the steel to re-hone it. If it's there for too long, you got to hit it with a file, and then your weights go out the window. So that one grain you were complaining about wasn't really that important in the end. But no, that's the material, the stainless steel. Like everything we've done has been for a reason. Everything there is because of years and years and years of experience. And we've aligned ourselves with a lot of people that spend a lot of time afield, and we take their opinions and their feedback seriously, and sometimes it's shit to hear, but all feedback's good, whether it's good or positive or negative. You need that to grow and develop things. And if everyone just said, oh yeah, it's the best, well, you'd never change anything, and you'd never continue to strive to get the absolute best out of it. So we're always going to keep chasing them 1%. That's a pain, but we're always striving for perfection.
I was going to say, I should probably stop telling everyone it's the best then. Let's start.
They'll always be. They're the best. They are the best.
Originating in Texas, USA, Numa Outdoors has formulated a durable, breathable, quiet, and comfortable camouflage. Vital for the hunt, their lineup is perfect for concealing you across all terrain, seasons, and pursuits. If you've been paying attention, then you would have seen us across our socials running the Numa lineup. Whether it's at home here in Australia or abroad in the USA hunting for elk, mule deer, and pronghorn, Numa camouflage comes with us. They have a pattern and lineup suitable for every pursuit. If it's early season with hot and humid conditions, then their Renegade lineup is perfect. If you're hunting the rut and temperatures are more frigid and cool, then we recommend trying the Alpha Vertex gear. Start with the merino pullover base layer, which we absolutely love. Then bulk up your kit by adding external layers such as the Alpha Vertex pants, jumper, or vest. For those days where wind chill is a concern and you can't quite get warm, run their puffer jacket, gloves, or beanie and hunt super cozy and comfortable. We are pleased to announce that the Numa range and all their products we have just mentioned are stocked exclusively here in Australia by Venture Hunting and Outdoors. Head into their mega store in Brisbane or smaller store in Hamilton, Victoria to check out the whole range today. Also available via their website www.venturehunting.com.au.
So jumping in now into the testing we've done today, what I will just do before we jump into the tests is just outline the range that they've got here at Kayuga Broadhead. So, they've got the old schools, which are the first heads they had out. They've then gone and developed the pilot cuts, which, essentially looks like an aeroplane if you're like looking from above, really. And they're a single bevel head with the two different varieties, or the three different varieties, I should say. So you can shoot it without a bleeder at all, which is just like a two blade broadhead, single bevel, beautiful head. You can put the standard bleeders in there, which obviously adds an additional cut.
Yeah, so that's 17 to 18 millimeters of additional cut on the standard bleeders. And then the wide cut gives you a 25.4 or a 1 inch additional cut on the 100, the 125, and the 150 is a 30 mil cut on the main blade. And then you add that's 17. They end up being around 18 mil, but we just say 17. So you end up with a 47 mil cut. So you're pretty close to that 2 inch mechanical, all contained within an aerodynamic solid broadhead. And yeah, once you throw the wide cuts on, you're talking 55 mil, so over 2 inch, 2.25 inch cut. It's a real big hole punch.
Oh yeah, even just like the standard bleeders with the 150 grain, or the standard bleeders that I've been using, have made some serious holes in like everything, like whether it be in an elk or a fox. Like they're just I haven't shot a rabbit with one, but
it makes a big mess of them.
Can
confirm.
Yeah, I was going to say I wouldn't really want to. Do you want to jump into the Zots and Tri-Zots?
Yeah, man. So the other heads we got in the range there are the Zot, the two blade, Ian Summers Signature Series, which is a full stainless steel construction, double bevel. It's got the drive force technology and the Hematech channels in them just to allow extra blood through. It also makes them a little bit quieter with the aerodynamics, which is something we found out while doing some sound testing earlier this year. But yeah, those things there are deadly. They're your Pano kings. Like if you're a low poundage shooter, or you're chasing, you want pass-throughs, that is the broadhead for you. You won't find, I put the challenge out there to anyone to find a broadhead that requires less kinetic energy to pass through. Like those tests we did there, that we'll get into in a little bit, the figures, it's ridiculous, really, what the difference is between that and some of the other ones. And then we go across to the Tri-Zot, which is the latest broadhead to hit our lineup, which is it's a replaceable blade, 3-blade, single bevel, cut on contact broadhead. Each size has a different cut diameter, so they start the 100 grains around 23 millimeters, and then the cut size continues to grow from there with them. But they're also a full stainless steel construction, so you don't have to worry about edges rusting or oxidizing and stuff like that. Each pack comes with a full set, so 9 replacement blades as well. So in each packet, you're essentially getting 6 broadheads for the price of 3. And yeah, those things are super easy to tune. The guys are running through hooter shooters and like super popular with guys doing those like New Zealand hunts and pushing the limits and that long range, because that 3-blade, it just balances out. It's an even weight. It's not trying to steer the ship as much as a solid 2-blade. The tunability is a bit easier, and if you're not the greatest at sharpening, these things come with spare blades, and we sell spare blades as well. So, and the ferrules are pretty bomb proof there. Like you just touch them up with a file at the tip if you do end up hitting a rock or something like that. And then the other stuff that we do have is all our broadheads, we have a ballistically matched field point for every single one. So whether it be old school, pilot cut, Zot, tri-Zot, we've got a field point that is, length, like basically every millimetre, the density or the weight is matched in a field point there to give you the best accuracy possible while you're practicing without chewing your targets to shreds.
So pretty much they've got a head for everyone, whether it's single bevel, double bevel, 2, 3, 4 blade. But what I want to dive into now, and I know hopefully you guys have sort of whet your appetite by hinting at it a few times here, but, talk about some of the testing that we've done today. So the first one, like I mentioned earlier, and I'll probably get Grant to go through all the results and also just run through, but the key concept of the first test that we done was purely looking at, how sharp a broadhead was out of the packet. And I'm going to do the disclosure statement today, saving Grant doing it because he's done it a couple of times. So we, Grant was testing all of his own range. So, the old schools, the tri-Zots, the Zots, the pilot cuts, in all of these tests. So it was a 3-part test series. But Grant also tested them, against competitive broadheads in the market. So some of those broadheads were US companies, some of them were Australian companies. There was a complete varied range of, fixed blade, mechanicals, 2 blade, 3 blade, 4 blade, chemically sharpened, we had
ground linished, a whole heap of variations and a couple of different styles.
Yeah, and we had everything, in terms of variety. And I guess the point of this, for me saying it now instead of Grant, is because I just want to give you guys the confidence, whether you see it or whether you just hear the results in this podcast, that Grant went and actually purchased all these broadheads from retailers from all over Australia to get these broadheads. They got delivered in the post, like they would rock up to you legends who listen to this podcast, and were opened and literally cut open before my eyes, and we've got them and done all these testing with them. Like they haven't, if anything, I want to actually say he's been too nice on some of these heads with some of the results that we'll get into and stuff. And I'll probably point out the differences and stuff, but he, if there was like a bad result that he thought was an outlier and it was for a competitive head, like he would scratch it from the testing and stuff, which is what you should do, you know what I mean? But he wasn't at the end of the day, he's they're very confident in the heads that they use, and they're more doing this testing to prove, these concepts and the time and effort and, all the work they've done in designing the heads rather than just bad mouthing others. But at the end of the day, they've got to use what's in the market to compare to sort of emphasize that point. But I more just wanted to say, none of this is, we're unbought people, or at least we are at Twin Elements, and we obviously work with Kayuga Broadheads a lot, but there would be no way that we would jeopardize our relationship with you legends, and also put out false data and stuff. And we encourage people, like we said at the end of every video, if you think there's been some bias or anything like that, go out and literally do these tests for yourselves, and we'd love to see the results and love to openly talk about it, because we feel that we've done it to the highest standard, and in a lot of ways, I'd probably add, I feel like Grant probably had a bit of a bias against against his own broadheads and 4 other broadheads at times, but we've definitely done the testing to the best of our abilities. So if you want to jump in and talk about the first test. If you're an Aussie hunter, you already know those early starts are brutal. Rolling out of the swag at 4 a.m, freezing cold, eyes half shut, and all you want is a coffee that actually hits. That's why I use Dog and Gun coffee. Roasted here in Australia, Dog and Gun makes coffee for people who live outdoors. Hunters, fishers, campers, the whole lot. Their brews are strong, smooth, and pack enough punch to get you moving up the mountain before first light. And the best part, you can get it as beans, grounds, or lightweight instant sachets that actually taste like real coffee when you're on the mountain. Whether you're heading bush for a week or just brewing up home before work, Dog and Gun keeps you fueled for whatever adventure you're chasing. Check them out at dogandguncoffee.com and use code TWIN10 to get $10 off your first order and upgrade your camp coffee today.
Yeah, thanks, mate. So the first test we did is a sharpness test. So we've got a best certified sharpness tester. So it uses a scale, a weight scale, essentially. And then it's a test media, which is a piece of like a thin wire, pre-stretched and crimped to a disposable plate that you slip in. And yeah, we set that up there, and I don't even want to know how many of those we chewed through today. I think I had 250 at the start of the day, and I think there might be 10 or 20 left. We did a fair few tests, and as James said there, if there was any that were a bit winky, we'd scratch them and do it again. And yeah, it might have been a bit unbiased, but we did those tests in there, and to make it more regimented, I built a jig, so the broadhead screws in, and you can actually index it to have the blade being square with the cutting device, and you can also set the height back and forth so it's cutting, in the middle of the broadhead. For some of the ones that have a real steep angle, we had to adjust them out because when they come down, the angle actually pushes the test medium away. So there's a little bit of trial and error there, but yeah, in the video you'll see it's a repeatable thing. So every time that test is done, it's the same line, it's the same angle, it's the same motion or force that goes onto that to get a repeatable test. And yeah, the results were really good. Some of the heads scored really well. I'm super proud of some of our heads there because we did the test with a Havlon blade as well, and it was that's the only one sheet that I don't have there, or is that it there? Yeah, I've got that there. So the Havlon blade was 156 grams of force to actually cut the test medium, and we had our the pilot cut and the Trizot were 155 and 158 grams of force to cut that. So we're super proud to have a product on the shelf that is as sharp as a scalpel or a Stanley blade sort of thing. Within that BESS, they have a chart which references different levels of force in relation to common household things for everyone. So basically, in the score sheet, anything under 300 is what they class as a high-end utensil, kitchen knife, all that sort of stuff, and anything under 200 is in this class of utility blades, so Stanley knives, scalpels, Havlon blades, all that sort of stuff there. So yeah, we out of the 5 heads that we tested there, we had 3 of them come in under the 200, and the other ones are under the 300 mark. So we're that's extremely good for us, and yeah, makes me a very happy boy.
And like we said, we're not here to badmouth other companies and whatnot, but like I've sort of emphasized, there is a lot of testing that you guys have done over the literally years of product testing, in this sort of realm to get these sort of results. So can you just outline for the people some of the other results of the competitors? How many? I think we ended up having 9?
We had eight competitors' heads in there. They varied from a machined edge that's been lineaged by hand. Some there are a ground edge, which all of our heads are a ground edge, and then there's some there that are a replaceable blade, or the mechanicals, which I believe, without knowing the full process, but I'd say they're a chemically sharpened or a ground process that they use as well. But yeah, the range of results from there, we got 143 was the sharpest, and then we pushed out to upper 600 on some of the tests. And the way we did it was we did 3 tests with each head, and as James said, if we had one that was, let's just say we did a test and it was 200, it was 210, and then we got a 350. We scrapped the 350 and we did a test again just to make sure we weren't, throwing a rogue number in there and stuffing those averages up. But yeah, the raw figures, 758 was the dullest test that we did through that that thing there, and it was good to see where our heads fell in that line. And like I said, we don't do this to rag on anyone or belittle anyone else. We just want to know where we're sitting at in the market, and from the testing today, I'm confident, and we've got the proof now to say that we're sitting in that, in that upper tier. We're in that top 10%.
I think the big thing that I took away from it was, like I said, we had a huge range of different broadheads in terms of 2 blades, 3 blades, fixed, mechanicals, ones that we suspect were chemically sharpened and stuff. And so a lot of the heads that came in I guess comparable in that less than 200 sort of scale were all the ones that were the replaceable blade, broadhead sort of things. So they were the mechanicals that you're going to be using once. They were, ones that just had, a single. There was only one other fixed blade head on the market that was actually in that range, whereas everything else that was a fixed blade head was generally in that 350 to 400 and above, as an average, which for me just stood out because it's okay, so you're in the realm of the sharpness of the replaceable blade ones. And we're not talking about the bleeders that you put into it. We didn't test the bleeders. We're talking about a pilot cut or,
we're talking about the main blades, the main grinds on those broadheads, not the little add-on bleeders and stuff like that.
Yeah, which, was huge, in confidence that it's you can take these broadheads straight out of the packet and they're pretty much, most of them are going to be close to the sharpness of a Havlon scalpel blade or whatever. That's massive in terms of confidence when you're going out there actually hunting and stuff like that. And, is probably a perfect example into, the second part where we talk about edge retention. And once again, I'll let you sort of lead the thing. But essentially what we wanted to do was just test, once the broadhead had actually gone into, gone through bone, gone through an animal's ribs, all of that, real life scenario. How good is the steel to hold up and actually hold that edge on the other side? And the results there were really, that's when, with these tests, we really put these broadheads through the pace. And that's where, these results sort of start getting interesting.
Yeah, well, it was good. It's good to do that secondary test on the deer, because a lot of those replaceable blades, I suppose, that we talk of that, had a really good initial score. Once they went through that critter, they, that edge retention went out the window. Hence, they're a replaceable blade head, because you wouldn't want to run that again. One of the heads there, the blades completely, we tried 3 or 4 different spots along the edge, and it just, the whole edge of that blade was rolled over. It was, it was unusable essentially. That broadhead's just throw it in the bin. But we had, for example, the pilot cut, before we did it, that cut was 155 grams, and then after it was 183. So it's still under that 200, which is your utility blade, your Stanley knife, your Havlon. So we're still in that realm there, and all of our heads, bar one, were around, the difference was 30 grams of cutting force. Was added to what it took after it went through that animal, and the edge retention. The single bevel actually got better, which I think is just part of what I said before. I'm not the biggest fan of having razor sharp heads out of the packet, because I believe if there's a slight burr on it when it goes through that animal and that critter, it actually takes that burr off and exposes the proper edge there. So, I've argued this for years, and I always leave a slight burr on my heads, and I've never had an issue with it. That's always an argument in camp, whoever you're with, because it's got to be razor sharp and shaven. But some of the heads in this test there, they added 1,074 grams, so over a kilo of force additional to this to cut that test medium. So, the edge retention on those heads there. And look, some of the other ones, there's a couple there that did really well and didn't change a great deal. And, other ones just, the edge just did not hold at all. So, again, it was another where all that years of working on our steel and the angles and stuff like that to get the ultimate product for you guys, it essentially means you can shoot that arrow through a critter, pick it back up, give it a very light hone. I mean, the numbers there, they're still at that sharpness edge, but we always recommend just giving them a very light touch up. It goes back in the quiver and it's reusable. It's not a one-shot wonder. It's a multi-hunt, multi-animal broadhead.
And I think like with this test was probably the biggest unbiased sort of result that I saw from Grant, in the sense that like, so he would look at every single broadhead, whether, and we're talking mainly about the competitors here because I don't think we had any problems with any of the Kayugas.
We had one little scuff on one of the pilot cuts, but I did shoot that through the spine, so to be slightly expected, but yeah.
Yeah. But we had, like, so with all the other broadheads, he would look, and just say it was a two blade for simplicity of this example, like he would look at the head and he would look at the edge on that two blade. And if one side was like 100% crimpled over, he would use the best side to then go and test the edge retention, which, I mean, it's sort of true because
we don't have to do it, but
you're getting like, yeah. But anyway, so I just wanted to add that in there because it was like, you know, it's not like we were picking the crappest.
Yeah, we weren't picking the worst part of it to do the test. We were picking the best part available and lining it up to do that test. Again, like I said, none of these tests are to bash other companies, other products. We're literally just doing it to see where our products stack up in the market. We've spent a lot of time, we've dedicated a lot of time and money to get these products to be where we're happy with them, and we're now putting them against other heads and seeing where they are, and it's great to see the fruits of our labour succeeding and going so well through these tests. I'm excited to do more of it, to be honest.
Oh, and for sure, and that's where like we, you know, like it's obviously going to a lot of stuff coming out on their YouTube channel around this testing and stuff. But I mean, if there's stuff that you want done at Kayuga and stuff, like please send it, you know, happily send it in to us at Twin Elements or send it over to one of them, because they're like super keen. Or if you guys have ideas on, you know, tests that you want to see done, whether it be more like anatomy stuff, like cutting up real, you know, animals, or whether you want to do like ballistic testing, you know, to see like the revolution of a single bevel versus double bevel. There's heaps of stuff that can be done. So it's like whatever you guys want to be done, then, you know, we can organise some stuff and some more days like today and do some more testing for you guys. But last but not least, part 3 of this test. Do you want to jump into that?
Irongate Knives are an Australian-owned and operated small business. They specialise in quality handmade knives. Whether it's a hunting knife, filleting knife, cleaver, or custom creation, get in touch with the team today and they will take care of you. Sign up to their email list for up-to-date news relating to their weekly knife drops. It's a first-in, first-served system, so be quick. We have just got our hands on a few knives from their range and they are super impressive. They make epic gifts for a friend or loved one and will last generations. It's not often that you can say that a tool will outlast its owner, but that's a fact when talking about quality blades. Check out Irongate Knives today by visiting irongateknives.com.
This one's the test that I've been probably most excited to do because basically it's a penetration resistance type test. So we've got an arbor press set up with a load cell on it that gives a digital readout and basically a force score. And we use a 3-piece test medium, so it's a rubber back carpet, a gym floor mat, and then a high density like pinboard type thing. And we use that to sort of replicate the fighting pad of a boar. And the reason we're doing that with this testing anyway is because you can have variations with a fighting pad on a boar. You can have certain parts that are a bit thicker. You can have certain parts that are a bit more gristly. I mean, it's a great test thing to do, and the boys have been doing it up at Kayuga Adventures for years. And over the years through camps, we've done similar things with people and shown them, you know, hey, this is what your broadhead's doing. Try and push that through. And I've talked about it on other podcasts and stuff before, but yeah, this way here, it's a solid medium and it's the same medium through all of them. And yeah, the results are really good in our favour. We have spent a lot of time and done a lot of edits to the front half of our broadhead to try and decrease the resistance. We're forever striving to, bring the best product to market, and we've made a lot of small, minute changes along the way. Like if we had to do like the Gen 2 pilot cut, if we had to do the gens, it'd probably be somewhere around a Gen 17 or something like that. Just all the little tiny tweaks that most people wouldn't even notice until you point out. But doing that test there, basically we did the test on each head 3 times and took the average of it. And then what we did is we batched them into 3 different categories. So we batched them into a 2-blade, a 3-blade, and a 4-blade category. And then what we did from there was basically picked the best, like our best product in that category. And then we put that against the best and the worst competitor's head. And we got a percentage difference of what that other head, the additional energy or the additional force that broadhead has to do the same job as our broadhead that's in the same category and the same range. So, like for example, the Zot 2-blade, it took 21.65 kilograms of force to punch through that meteor. Our closest competitor was 29.98. So that's a 38.5% difference. So that competitor's broadhead has to do 38.5% more work to get into the cavity, to punch through the skin. And we're not even talking about hitting bone here. We're just talking about the outside, the skin, the fighting pad to get into the vitals. So like massive differentials there in the numbers. Like, 38%. If I said you're going to get a 38% pay rise, you'd be pretty bloody excited, wouldn't you? But then we go across to like the 3-blade there. We had the Trizot, and it was 34.2 kilogram force to go through the meteor. And the closest competition to it was 54, which is a 57.9% difference. And in this test here, one of the other heads we did, it was the worst. It actually maxed our scale out at 103 kilograms of force, which is a 201% increase in work that it has to do. So, on those, hunts of a lifetime, those valuable hunts, do you really want your broadhead having to do more work than it has to do?
Oh, and that's the big, seeing the test, and we'll get to the pilot cut in a second, but that was the huge takeaway. Like, because we're talking about more force required to do the same job. Like, it's not like,
it's not doing a different job. It's doing the exact same job. It's literally just
penetrating the media. And so that's where it's like, and we've batched them. Like, I'm not going to lie, like we didn't compare if things were an inch cut to a 1 inch and 1/8 cut or whatever like that. Like, we didn't look into any of those things. So, I mean, but the thing is, like, even if there was, it was like, what's the Zot is an inch wide?
26, yeah. So it's a thinner cut.
But the thing is, like, even if it's a thinner cut, it's not, even if the other ones are 1 and 1/8, a 38% increase in force is not going to make up for the difference of a 1/8 difference in.
You're only talking, 10, 12, maybe 15% difference in cutting diameter in comparison to a 38% difference in force required.
Yeah. And so, and the same with the 3 and the 4-blade. But the thing that really got me was just, how much more force it was required to do the same job. And that's where, like, if you're someone that's like what we've mentioned a couple of times, like, we're not trying to stereotype anyone, but, kids, females, people that aren't shooting super high poundage, whether they've had injuries, they just don't want to, shorter draw lengths that maybe don't have, the same level of kinetic energy, like something like the Zot, where it's like, you're getting all this extra bang for your buck, really. Like, it's a super sharp broadhead, which we've proven. It has really good edge retention, which we've proven. And then the next thing is, it's getting into where it needs to with so much more efficient, and getting into where it needs to so much easier. It's like, that's the perfect head for all those people that are just listed. Whereas, like, if you're someone like myself who's shooting 80 pound and 30 inch draw, well, you can afford to, have a bit of a bigger head or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, if you're worried about like splitting bone or getting into bone, there's so many different factors there that, other things, single and double bevel, like we've spoken about. But like, if you want to have two wound channels where it's going through both sides. So if you want to have the ability to crush through bone and not worry about what shot angle and stuff, there's so much in these testing that we've learnt now about, penetration ability of a broadhead. And not only that, but how much better they are compared to other broadheads on the market.
And even some of the initial force that we didn't really make a note of in this test, but it's something that we're paying attention to while we're doing it. The initial force to actually, penetrate into that skin, just the very initial, penetration in. So if you've got an angling shot or something like that, and you've got a broadhead with a really steep angle, it's going to struggle to get in, and it'll run the ribs. It'll deflect. Your chances of a deflection are a lot higher. Through the testing there, it's probably something that we'll touch on and do a little bit more of later down the track. But yeah, the results are great. We couldn't be prouder. So, and then just back, the last one there on those results there was the Kayuga pilot cut with a standard bleeder fitted there. So it took a total of 45.5 kilograms force to penetrate through that media. And our closest competition to that was 61.05 kilograms force. So that's a 34.2% difference again there. So just crazy the numbers there. And like I said, it's great for us, all that work that we've put on to making a streamlined aerodynamic product that penetrates and does the job well. To see the proof in the pudding is, it's just the cherry on the cake, really.
Well, there you have it, legends. Hopefully, you've taken a lot away from this podcast and all the testing that they've done, the rigorous amount of testing they've done at Kayuga Broadheads. Obviously, as you're aware from listening to this, Aiden and I absolutely love them and wholeheartedly believe and trust them to take them on all our international and domestic hunts. And we don't see ourselves changing anytime soon because we've had such great success, since we've transitioned and started using them. So, was there anything else you wanted to cover before we sort of wrapped up the podcast?
Not particularly, mate.
No, cool.
We've ticked all the boxes here, I think.
No, perfect. I do have a FAQ to jump into. So this is our frequently asked questions segment, which I know you'll be aware of because I know you listen to the podcast. But for those people, if you guys have a question that you want answered on the podcast in the future, please either send us an email at info@twinelements.com.au with the subject line FAQ, or you could send us a message on any of the socials accounts. I should specify Instagram, whether that be Twin Elements, Aiden Doumtsis Outdoors, or James Doumtsis Outdoors, with your question, and we'll answer it obviously there, but then answer it on a future podcast, because we do find that if one person has a question, often two or three people have a very similar question. So we often get a lot of people sending in saying, "Oh, it's perfect. You answered such and such on the last podcast. I've been thinking about that for ages," or whatever. But this question's actually sent in from Aiden because he has, he's always been a bit of a bog file man, and I think it's one of the reasons why he shoots the Zots. That just from what we've talked about with, some people struggle with the single bevel. He's never really used a file to sharpen. But I, obviously have, and maybe that's just from using chainsaws more. And I don't know. Anyway, but his question is, what are the best ways to sharpen a broadhead, whether it be, single bevel, double bevel, it doesn't really matter. Like if you've just got a broadhead, what is the best way? Are you better off using stones, bog files, files, strops, what is...
Thank you so much for that loaded question. Again, it all varies on how damaged the broadhead is. If it's got big gouges and stuff like that, then you might have to go back to that bog file or a bastard or a second cut file to get the bulk of that heavy work out. But for almost all the broadheads I've ever used, I just use a 150mm half round smooth file. The fact that it's a smooth file is really important because it takes a very small cut and you're not trying to take a heap of material off at one time. So we often get people, it's the most common asked question we get, how do you sharpen a pilot cut? And you go, this 150mm half round smooth file. The radius that's on the back of that file is the same radius that's on the inside of the pilot cut. You can then use that file on the old schools, on the Zots. If you want to go right down that avenue and you've got a small enough vise, you can sharpen the blades on the Tri-Zots if that's what you want to do. But yeah, that 150mm half round. But the biggest thing is you need to get a quality file. Don't go and buy a cheap Bunnings jobby, because the broadheads, most of the broadheads in our range are between 46 and 48 Rockwell hardness, and you get a cheap file and it's the same hardness. It's just you're rubbing two stones together that are the exact same. They're never actually going to wear out. They're just going to sit there and polish up. So we sell them on the website, but if you don't want to do that, you can go to like a Total Tools, a Sydney Tools, a Tool Shop, a Blackwood, somewhere like that where they sell industrial tools, and get a good quality file, and it'll blow your mind. Like, yeah, the amount of people that go, I've been trying to do it and I'm using, this second cut of this bastard cut file, and the grooves in the file are almost as big as the cutting edge on the broadhead. Like, they're fighting a losing battle from the get-go, and no wonder they can never get it sharp. Just, yeah.
Speaking from experience, I was that guy. Not the bastard file guy, but the crappy. Like, I went and got a half round one from Bunnings, but I just went and grabbed like a $15 jobby, and I mean, like, I was getting them pretty sharp, but it wasn't until I actually grabbed one of the ones from you guys at the expo and then sharpened up some broadheads afterwards, and it was like chalk and cheese getting them. Like, even just getting, because obviously with the file, you're just getting it to the point that there's that burr there, and then you're using that steel to sort of either completely remove it or partially remove it depending on, your...
Correct. Yeah, it's your preference.
Your preference. But just getting it to that actual burr part, I noticed a massive difference in using the file, like in the good quality file compared to the ones that I'd previously used. Yeah. And so, definitely having the right gear for your job, or the job is going to be, especially in this case, it's worth, like, you've invested the money in, doing the training, tuning your bow, blah, blah, blah. Like, such a huge component is how just blatantly sharp your broadhead is, which I've learned, slower than most, especially from, like, I now would say using like inferior brands previously, and finally coming over to the lovely side of...
You've seen the light, mate.
I've seen the light. And actually using a broadhead that, from all the testing like we've done, is really standing up in the market. And it has been fantastic to shoot. It's incredible how well you can sharpen these broadheads.
And that's the difference between a $15 file and a $30 file. And you have it for, if you look after it, get a file brush and stuff like that, maintain it, you'll have that file for the foreseeable future until you lose it, sort of thing. So, yeah, quality file and a decent steel. And if you're one of those crazies that like to shave with your broadhead, get yourself a leather strop as well. The other thing that's pretty handy are the little ceramic, like plate sharpeners and stuff like that. So I think it's Workmate or Work Tools or Workshop or something like that, do like a little combo that's got a coarse and a fine plate, and then it's got like a strop and a little steel, all ceramic steel, like built into it. Really good for the pack, but that won't take out big dings and stuff like that. Like, it's prime for just touching up a head after you've shot it through something. But yeah, for that hard work, I mean, if you get a file, one of those workshop things, and a steel, you'll be able to sharpen pretty much anything that you come across in your life with just those. And if you're in the outdoors and hunting, you sort of owe it to yourself and what you're doing to learn the art of. You don't have to get it as sharp as the butcher, but you need to get a working sharp, because all the things that we do through hunting, skinning, cutting animals up, breaking them all down, it's another skill. It's another facet of the wonderful thing we do called bow hunting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode of the podcast. Thank you, Mr. Rand, for giving us your time. It's been a massive day. Left Cape York yesterday, got delayed. I didn't actually land until near, like, I think it was like 10:40 or something by the time I got out of the airport. Grant came and picked me up. We've come, an hour out of Sydney. Didn't get to bed till about 12. We actually got up at 5 a.m. this morning to go and shoot this deer so we could do this testing and have it as fresh as possible. So yeah, it's been then a massive day of filming. We didn't finish filming until about 8:30. And then, we've jumped on, quickly had dinner, jumped onto this podcast. It's now 11 o'clock and I think it's time to go to bed before I fly out again.
Oh man, the eyes are hanging out of the heads here. She's a pretty sorry looking camp at the minute.
Yeah, the crowd's struggling. But anyway, thank you, Grant, for having me today. It's definitely been eye-opening for me and just really, it's been fantastic just to see how well these broadheads performs and just fill me full of confidence, obviously going out there and then using them on all these big hunts that we do here at Twin Elements. So, thank you for letting me be a part of the process and seeing it all. And obviously, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing the great work that you guys do at Kayuga Broadheads and all these results you've got. I know the listeners would really appreciate it.
Man, anytime, mate. Always happy to help anyone in the archery space. So, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. And happy hunting out there. Good luck to you all.
Well, that's it for today, friends. I know you guys would have got a lot out of it because I certainly did. As you're listening to this, we've got 3 more days till Christmas, so you may be even listening to this on the drive on Christmas Day to celebrate with friends and family. So if you are, have a fantastic Christmas, stay safe and enjoy the holiday season. But a few things to tick off while you're relaxing at home. We've had our 8-part vlog series, bow hunting elk in Montana, which is sort of an extended against all odds version. We've split up into 8 cinematic pieces. That's been dropping on our YouTube. So if you're keen, you got nothing to do, sit down Christmas Eve, Wednesday the 24th at 6 p.m. and watch part 5. So from memory, that is a very saucy episode, fair bit of action in that one. As we get to the tail end of the episodes, there's plenty happening. So make sure to tune in every week. We've got an episode dropping on our YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe. Leave a comment and keep up to date by subscribing because there is plenty of action coming out in 2026 on the YouTube channel. We've got a Northern Territory boar hunt coming after that, and then we go into our red deer raw and fallow deer rut hunt from 2025, which is super action packed. We get a couple of good critters there, which then leads into our Cape York trip, where plenty of good toothy boars hit the deck, and then we go into our US stuff, where we've got a big series there, probably 12 or 14 part series there of our epic hunt that we had in Montana, chasing those big muleys, antelope, and also that big elk that Aiden got. So plenty of footage to come out. There's at least 20 films there that we've just mentioned, let alone ones that we're filming at the moment to come out in 2026. So like I said, if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. And we really want to boost the YouTube channel in 2026. So make sure to be watching every week. Next on the agenda, if you haven't organized a Christmas present yet, you slack dog, make sure to take advantage of our 20% off prints giveaway. So we've got 20% on all prints. The sale ends Boxing Day, so hopefully you're not listening to this too late and you're following the podcast week by week. But if you use the code TWIN20, that will get you 20% off one of the prints up until Boxing Day. There's a heap of different stuff on there. There's definitely something for everyone, and something that would definitely make a great present if you have left things to the last minute. We'll get on that and get it shipped out to you as soon as possible. So use the code TWIN20 to get 20% off on a print for you or a loved one. But that's it from me. Hopefully you guys learned a lot in this podcast. It was really awesome doing a lot of this testing with Grant, and also being able to share it with you guys afterwards, and just reflects the quality of the broadheads that they have here at Kayuga. So thank you once again for listening to the podcast. If you haven't already, review, subscribe, rate the podcast. It just helps grow it in the community. And we appreciate all your support, and we'll catch you next time on the Twin Elements podcast. Bye, guys.